Meet Abhishek Vyas, an educator and mathematics mentor with over 15 years of experience. A CAT quantitative ability 100 percentiler, he has helped students master mathematics, logical reasoning, and problem solving. Beyond academics, he enjoys philosophy, puzzles, travel, and exploring ideas that inspire growth and learning.
Every CAT aspirant has an opinion on AIMCAT. Either they think that they are extremely helpful or they think they are tough. Now, I have been on the other side of the entire process and I have helped design the thinking behind framing of questions, the purpose of questions, and today I want to give the review that actually helps you. Not the marketing version, not the panic post version either. Honest, uncut, practical, and based on what data actually shows. We are going to talk about what AIMCAT genuinely does better than any other mock series in the country currently available, and how to navigate that friction so that it doesn't derail your preparation. So basically we are talking about how are we going to plan the integration of AIMCATs into our overall preparation process. And we are going to talk about something nobody really warns you about. So there is something that happens to the students psychologically in the month of October. Now people who have already witnessed it would understand, would know what I am speaking of, and others would actually be facing it pretty soon. Now we call that as October spiral. We'll be talking about that a little later in the video too, and how AIMCATs are actually built, are structured to help you move around it, right, to protect yourself from it. By the end of this video, you will know exactly why AIMCATs belong in your preparation calendar, and more importantly, how exactly to use them. Historically, if you will see, 99 percentile in the CAT is roughly around 50% of the test score wise. So that means 99% of the test takers are unable to score even 50% mark. So that indicates that the test is tough, so to say tough test. But is it really tough or not? We need to understand that, and let's consider for a while that it's tough, and let's continue. Now to prepare for a tough test like CAT, we will need to go for the right approach for our test prep. So what exactly is the right approach? We'll talk about that. So in that approach, the mocks as well, right, at the correct level, right, in the correct number would be really important, and that too mocks at the CAT level. Taking easier mocks and feeling good about it, scoring high, would not really be helping you in the real sense, because suppose you take a test which is easier than the CAT, you will score high, but then when you go for the CAT, there are two things that might happen. Point number one, CAT might actually be tougher than what your mock was. Second, here you would feel really happy, but still understand many others would be doing well. That means your percentile will not improve. So that way it's a double blow, if I can say. So thus, this is the place where AIMCATs would come in, because they truly mirror the CAT tests. Across multiple years, multiple slots, we have a team which actually works actively in making questions CAT-like, right? Because every year there are some changes in CAT. We have a team which is actually working towards mirroring those changes in our AIMCATs. So thus you get to see, and we are trying to give you variety of tests. So thus you get to see there are some AIMCATs which are easier than CAT, some AIMCATs which are tougher than CAT, and some AIMCATs which would be at the same level. Making sure, we try to make sure that the students get to face different scenarios. Okay, when you get a percentile in AIMCAT, you are being ranked against a pool that closely mirrors the actual CAT test. I hope you understand this. Now this is in terms of the test taker profiles, geographical location, engineers, non-engineers, with respect to preparation levels, etc. So that way the test taker pool in AIMCAT would be very closely mirroring the actual CAT. You would also be getting to compete against people who are repeaters. You get to see that in AIMCATs as well. People who have good amount of work experience, right? Just like you would have in the actual CAT. So what I'm trying to emphasize here is you get a full spectrum. That's rare. That's actually very hard to replicate at scale. And that is where the AIMCAT's national benchmarking is considered the most accurate mirror of your performance, your real competitive standing. Now, with that foundation laid, let me walk you through what AIMCATs do exceptionally well and where a student needs to be smart about managing expectations. I will say this directly, no other mock series gives you a more accurate picture of where you stand against the pool, the test pool. If you are at 85th percentile in an AIMCAT, closer to the CAT, so basically I'm talking about the AIMCATs which happen really close to the AIMCAT, let's say a month before CAT, 6 weeks before CAT. If you are at 85th percentile in that particular AIMCAT, that number is meaningful. It is 85th out of a group of serious test takers, because people who are taking AIMCAT would be, of course, someone who is planning to crack CAT, who has put in real solid effort, and thus your 85th percentile would be really meaningful because it's against that particular group. That means the CAT percentile could be higher, of course, because if you're getting 85th here, in CAT the percentile could be higher because there will be large number of weaker students who would come below you. This is your most honest mirror, treat it as one. Now, here is where most students get AIMCATs wrong. They take an AIMCAT in August, get a low score and spiral. They think that they are behind, they start doubting themselves, all these thoughts starts creeping in, right? And that's completely understandable. But it's also based on a misreading of what score actually means. In difficult papers, students will feel helpless as there may not be many doable questions that they can attempt. Even with the perfect test taking strategy, even with the perfect preparation, they might feel helpless during the test because they are not able to attempt too many questions. This helplessness during the exam is not linked to the percentile because the paper was tough, everyone else would have done it equally bad. So thus, even with lesser score, the end percentile could actually be higher. But still, that feeling of helplessness during the test will stay with the candidate and might break the confidence. This helplessness is primarily related to confidence, right? Students who can reason that the test was difficult for everyone because there were not too many easier questions will be able to have that confidence in their question reading, question judging ability and will not feel helpless because they are unable to solve a few questions. Now, this confidence comes in two ways. One is you need to be prepared enough for the test, right? That means regular classes, regular practicing of material. And second thing is you need to be regular with your AIMCATs as well. Now, one more thing I would like to add at this stage is AIMCAT taking and also analyzing AIMCATs. These two things should be happening when I say you must be taking AIMCATs regularly. Your AIMCAT score is not your CAT prediction. Don't treat it like that. It was never designed to be. It's a stress test of your process, your decision making under pressure, and your emotional resilience. Now, are you able to perform in that high pressure situation or not? That is exactly being designed here, that is being tested here. Try to understand that part. AIMCATs help you understand where you're good at. So, for example, if you have a certain area, a certain type of questions that you're doing regularly correctly, you would actually during your analysis get to know that, right? And then you can actually improve further on that. At the same time, some areas where you are repeatedly getting the wrong answer, right? There are such cases for all of us, right? Maybe some of us are not so great with geometry. Maybe someone else is not so great with linear arrangement problem, right? Venn diagram problems. Now you get to see this in your AIMCATs and then take corrective actions. So that is the purpose exactly of identifying your weakness, identifying your strengths and acting accordingly. Now students who are able to understand this use AIMCATs correctly and they would be eventually performing better than the rest. DILR is where I think AIMCATs earn their reputation most decisively, and here is why. In any AIMCAT, you would encounter some DILR sets that cannot all of them be solved in the given timeline. Now that is not a design error, that is not by mistake, that is actually the plan. Because one of the most important skills that one would learn during the CAT DILR preparation phase is not solving all the sets. It is about picking up the right kind of sets in that given timeline. So for example, by going through a set for 1 or 2 minutes, are you able to judge whether you will be able to spend the next 10 minutes and get it right? Or even better, I would say, if you're not able to, let's say you take the judgment call that you'll not be able to solve the set, move away from it. That judgment is what separates a low percentile student from a high percentile student. AIMCAT's DILR section forces you to build the skill of set selection systematically. Now, after 6 to 8 AIMCATs, you would notice that your set selection intuition will be meaningfully sharper, better. Now that is quantifiable, transferable edge for the real exam. Now let's talk about QA. QA is where you will need your question selection skill to the core. A seemingly tough question could be an easy one, right? Could be a sitter, or vice versa. Sometimes you might look at a question, you might think about solving it, and after maybe 30, 40, 50 seconds, you would realize the question is not as easy as it seemed. So both cases could be possible. Good preparation lays the foundation for question selection, and AIMCATs actually provide that platform for practicing that. Now the parts you're probably waiting for, because I think the most useful thing I can do here is to help you understand where some students struggle with AIMCAT and give you a practical way to work around it. These are not hidden secrets. These are patterns that show up consistently over the years in our analysis, and they all have workable answers. Now, the same difficulty that builds mental resilience for high scoring performing students can feel genuinely punishing for students who are lagging behind, right? Who are still to find the rhythm. However, here is a great learning insight that one can take, even the low scoring students can take. If you're scoring consistently low percentiles, now you need to just go back and analyze what exactly is going wrong. Take it as a warning light to know what you need to change in your overall strategy. For example, is your question selection wrong? Is your particular topic's preparation wrong? It's not the way it should be for CAT. So basically you try to take all these learnings, right, and strategize better for the next test. You may need to start preparing on tougher sets / questions because we'll take everything together, right? When I say set, it could be verbal or lrdi questions, could also be there for quant and verbal. So you need to prepare for tougher sets questions before you go for the AIMCAT, right? Now just make it a practice, because whatever learning you will have from this entire preparation would help you in proper set selection during the AIMCATs. Also, make it a point to get in touch with time mentors to discuss your preparation plan, your strategy, your strengths and weaknesses, so that it ultimately benefits you in the long run. Now let's talk about the VARC. Now VARC is, as we all know, is a silent killer. Now unlike QA and DILR, you don't really know whether your question was answered correctly or not, because during the test you might mark the answer and are like 99% sure, maybe sometimes 100% sure that you marked the right answer, but the perceived difficulty level of the test will increase, because once you get the scores, once the results are out, and you get a lower score, that would increase the perceived difficulty. So it's a very unique feature that we have for VARC section especially. Also, we at time in the AIMCATs, we set the VARC difficulty level at various levels. We try to match the difficulty level of CAT. Sometimes we make it easier than CAT. Some of the times we try to make it tougher than CAT. So that again, the students are exposed to all possible variations in the exam. Now, here is a calibration move. Use AIMCAT VARC to build your reading stamina and question selection, RC discipline, etc. Then cross-reference it against the actual CAT papers from the past 2-3 years. Now try to understand where your thinking is aligned with what actually is being tested in CAT and where there is some misalignment. And let AIMCAT toughen you in this process and guide you on where to improve. I want to now talk about something that doesn't get enough airtime in CAT preparation conversations. Something that has nothing to do with your quant accuracy, quant question selection, or your RC speed, reading speed, and everything to do with whether you actually show up on the exam day ready to perform or not. I call it the October spiral. Let's talk about this. Here is what it looks like. It is early October. You have been preparing since April, May. Right? You have covered the syllabus already. You also taken mocks and also analyze them. Then almost without warning, something shifts. You start second guessing your preparation. You look at your mock scores and they don't feel good enough. This is something that might happen with anyone. You start reading posts from students who seem to be doing really well, they are better prepared than you. You take a mock then, have a bad section, and again spend 3 days unable to study properly. Now this sounds familiar, right? This is not a preparation problem. I would call this a mindset problem. And this is exactly where AIMCATs come in. And please understand, it is so universal, this problem, that almost all the CAT aspirants would actually face it in the final 8 weeks. Now, here is where AIMCATs come in. Because AIMCATs prepare you for all possible scenarios of the actual CAT, students who have been taking AIMCATs consistently have already experienced their worst days. So they have gone through a quant section which felt almost impossible. They have had a bad day in the lrdi set selection. The set selection went for a toss. And also a similar kind of feeling during the VARC section. Now they have already recovered from that bad day, bad mock, came back the next week. AIMCATs used consistently builds the necessary mindset to tackle sections at various difficulty levels. It builds the required resilience to bounce back after seeing tough sections in the actual exam, because you have been there before, experienced it before. Now compare this to someone who is not consistently taking mocks. Now it would be a really tough phase for someone who is not taking mocks on the CAT day. On the actual CAT day, when a particular section feels tougher than expected, and it will, the student who has been through multiple AIMCATs and having thoroughly analyzed them will not panic. They have felt this before. This feeling is not new to them, and they know how to keep moving. That psychological buffer is not something you can build in 2 weeks. Now it accumulates over a full exam season, right? It would take few months probably of consistent, honest preparation, and that is, I would argue, AIMCAT's most underrated function. So, who is AIMCAT actually built for, and how should you approach it based on where you are right now? Let's talk about this. So, there are 3 rules that I would mention for using AIMCATs correctly. The first one, never judge your preparation by your AIMCAT score. Judge it by the post-exam analysis. and trying to understand what went right, what went wrong. More importantly, your AIMCAT percentile is meaningful. That is what you should be more concerned about. Your AIMCAT raw score taken alone is not. So always be careful about your percentiles, not so much about the scores, because they will vary from exam to exam depending on the difficulty levels. Spend at least as much time on the analysis, I would say more, after each AIMCAT as you did taking them. So of course you spend 2 hours on analysis. I suggest you should spend at least 3 hours, because during the analysis there is a lot of things to take care of, right? Maybe solving it again, trying to understand where you went wrong, the time analysis, the EMD analysis, so many things are there, right? So here is where I land on this. AIMCAT is not the easiest mock experience. It is not designed to be, but in the dimension that matters the most, it gives you the most accurate picture of where you actually stand and how you should be moving forward from there. Building the psychological resilience to hold your nerve on the CAT day. It is the best preparation tool in the country for serious CAT aspirants. Use it as a preparation compass, not as a confidence thermometer. So I seriously wish when I was a student, I had access to such content. So if you have liked this content, please do share it with your friends. Do subscribe to us. Study smart, not just hard. Good luck.